Welcome into Harky Sports. I'm your host, Nick Harkson, and with me today, I have high school wrestling coach Ben Stockwell. Thank you for joining me today, Ben.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate you asking me.
You've been coaching wrestling since 2004. What made you want to become a wrestling coach?
Uh, yeah, so I wrestled literally. I started when I was three, and I wrestled all the way through high school. And my high school career did not end the way that it should have, right? So I'm the youngest in a lineage of brothers who all had massive success, and I had success, but not on their level. So when I got out of high school, they went on to wrestling college. And I just thought to myself, man, I want to be as far away from wrestling as I can. And so I purposely went to a college that didn't have wrestling just so I could not even be tempted. Um, and less than 2 years later, I was being recruited by a school to try and come back and wrestle. And I didn't follow through on that either. And my one of my older brothers, who was an assistant wrestling coach actually for my team in high school, had the opportunity to become a head coach at kind of a larger program. And right around that same time, I was moving home. So I went away for college. I was in the Army for a while. So then when I came back, um, I started just as a volunteer assistant for him at kind of that newer, larger program. And I've done so now, kind of off and on, both as a paid assistant, a voluntary assistant, and then for also like the youth and kids program, off and on ever since then. So, in short, part one is that I missed the sport from being away from it, and then part two was to help my brother.
What was your greatest moment as a wrestling coach?
Oh man, That- I mean, like when kids win a state title, right, or your team makes it to team state, like those are up there for sure. But then again, and not to sound cheesy here, but at the same time, when it's like I coach in Rock Island, which is I'm not going to say predominantly because that's not true, but it's areas of Rock Island are poverty stricken, a lot of minority population, minority students, first year immigrants, what have you. So when we've got kids who go on to wrestle in college, um, who by and large probably wouldn't have gone to college otherwise, that in reality that's probably the larger reason to celebrate for me. You know that, yeah. So as far as big accomplishment as when pick a bad story that we have them, single parent homes with poverty and crime and whatever, and that kid goes on to get a college degree, and maybe he didn't even have a super successful high school or college career. He's not the poster boy for the program, but for that kid to have a college degree coming out of a city like Rock Island and the background that he has, that's the bigger deal to us, honestly. At least, yeah.
And what advice would you give to an inspiring young wrestler trying to get to the college level?
Don't start caring about winning until around eighth grade, and all of your, well, maybe seventh grade, but all of the junior high stuff is practice. And if your ultimate goal is college, then realistically, so is the high school stuff, right? So you always have to consider where you're currently at to be the step to where you want to be. Like I said, I've told, as we spoke before the interview, I'm kind of a blunt person, and I am with parents as well, and especially at the youth level when because I've coached a lot at the youth level as well. So like it's tough to tell not for me to tell you to tell a parent this, but it's tough for a parent to hear you say, look, I don't really care that much if your son or daughter is winning, right? I want them to be doing the moves that I teach in the room. I want them to be right. And so, like, I think some parents might take that the wrong way. And I guess I understand it, but again, the wins and losses are going to come as they come. The important part is, learning the lessons, learning the moves so that you can advance at a later time. Like I'm sure you can equate it to baseball, right? Everybody can be the 10-year-old national champs, but are you still the national champs when you're 15, 16? Are you still the national champs when you're 20? Right?
Great point there. Great point. All right, so I'm going to switch things up on you a little bit. I have to ask, you're a high school wrestling coach. Do you watch professional wrestling like WWE at all?
No, no, and I didn't really watch it growing up. It was like occasionally on Sundays, and I'm talking about when I was really little. It would have been, like 1985 when I was 5 or 6 years old. Like, Ultimate Warrior Hulk Hogan days, right? Andre the Giant or something. But after that, not really. And then when I went to college, actually one of my best friends in college literally went to Terry Funk's wrestling school. He was trained professionally to be a professional wrestler. And watching professional wrestling with him was always really funny to me because he was never like cheering for bad guy, good guy or anything. He would be like, oh, they messed that up. Or, oh, that when he cut that promo, he did it this way. Like he was looking at it from the perspective of being the showman as opposed to being a fan. And so I respected that piece of it. And so I would watch with him because it was kind of fun for me. And, we're in college and we're just hanging out. But, uh, in short, no, that whole thing, to be dead honest, baffles me. It really does. When people when grown adults are for real cheering, I don't know.
No,
I don't get
definitely.
it.
Definitely. And how is it perceived amongst your athletes that you coach?
I would probably challenge and say that Kurt Angle
Yeah.
broke the mold there. And I know the Steiner brothers, and there were some other guys before him that had come from pretty successful amateur wrestling careers to go on to the WWE or WWF or whatever. But Kurt Angle, he was the big one. I mean, he's literally an Olympic gold medalist, and then went to WWF, and he was a bad guy, and they used his amateur wrestling career as like fodder for him to be a bad guy. But I mean, whatever. I thought it was clever. I suppose it's funny if again, if you're a fan of that stuff, I'm sure it's hilarious. So I think that the perception has changed. Again, first and foremost, I would say Kurt Angle, but again with the UFC, kind of the same thing. Wrestlers started dominating the UFC, and so again, you could go with Brock Lesnar, who kind of did both, and so now, uh, I think that a lot of amateur wrestlers, and it really is a lot, that they kind of look at that as one career opportunity post wrestling, right? Like you could go to the UFC or you can go to the WWE. And I think that those two things are kind of more mutually accepted than they used to be.
I agree. I agree. Well, Ben, you have been an awesome guest today. And thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate your time with Harky Sports. My name's Nick Harkson, and have a good night.
All right. Yeah. Thank you very much.